Jewish people began their modern return to their ancient homeland in Israel back in 1882. Unfortunately, World War I temporarily halted Jewish immigration. But after the war, the League of Nations granted the British a mandate to govern what was then called Palestine, with the condition that the British create a Jewish national home, a re-established state in the land of Israel. Jewish people began to pour into their homeland, and many Bible believers across the world saw this as a work of God in fulfillment of Bible prophecy. God was stirring among the Jewish people. These were the circumstances when the Hebrew Christian Alliance of America, now the Messianic Jewish Alliance, approached the Moody Bible Institute of Chicago about starting a program in Jewish studies. Noting that God seemed to be working in a fresh way among Jewish people, the Alliance said there would be a need for trained workers, both Jewish and Gentile believers, to present the good news of Messiah. Effective workers needed training to develop special knowledge and skills to reach the Jewish people. The leadership of Moody Bible Institute concurred, and with the aid of the Alliance, initiated the Jewish Studies major in 1922. This program of study has continued without interruption, and now we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of Jewish Studies at Moody Bible Institute. The first order of business in 1922 was finding a professor of Jewish Studies. Moody called Joel Levy, a European-born Jewish believer in Jesus with expertise in rabbinics and Hebrew Bible. Unfortunately, Levy died just before classes were to begin, delaying the beginning of Jewish Studies to 1923. Then, upon the recommendation of the Messianic Jewish Alliance, the Institute called another European-born Jewish believer, Solomon Birnbaum, to take up the leadership of Jewish Studies. With classes beginning in 1923, Birnbaum began teaching the Jewish Studies program. For most summers during his tenure, Birnbaum would take students to Atlantic City, New Jersey to engage in outreach to the Jewish people. In 1940, Birnbaum left Moody to serve full-time in Jewish outreach. The Institute then turned to Max Reich, another European-born Jewish follower of Jesus, to lead the program. Reich had been a Bible instructor and conference speaker for Moody for the previous 10 years. At the same time, a much younger, London-born Jewish believer, Nathan Stone, came to Moody to teach some of the courses in Jewish Studies. Stone was the very first graduate of the MBI Jewish Studies program. When Reich passed away in 1945, Stone became the director of the Jewish Studies program, serving until 1966. Then Los Angeles-born Messianic Jewish believer Dr. Louis Goldberg joined the Moody faculty as professor of Jewish Studies. A great scholar with a practical edge, Dr. Goldberg ministered in Israel every summer for 25 years, usually taking Moody students with him to do outreach work. After 29 years as a full-time faculty member, Goldberg recommended his former Jewish Studies student, me, Michael Rydelnik, to take over the leadership of the program. Born in Brooklyn, New York, the son of Holocaust survivors, I was raised in an observant Jewish home. After trusting in Jesus the Messiah in high school, I graduated from Moody's Jewish Studies program and then went on for much more education. Prior to returning to Moody to teach, I also served as the leader of several Messianic congregations and in the ministry leadership of Chosen People Ministries. I believe my most significant contribution to the Jewish Studies major has been in updating the curriculum as well as mentoring many students into Jewish ministry. So, what's studied in the Jewish Studies major? At the outset, in addition to the Bible, theology, and ministry curriculum of Moody, Jewish Studies majors learned Hebrew, the language of the Old Testament, Yiddish, the language most Jewish people spoke before World War II, rabbinics, Jewish holy days, Jewish history, and Messianic prophecy. Louis Goldberg decided to remove Yiddish and add a course in the history of modern Israel. He also broadened the course in rabbinics into Jewish religious thought. When I arrived, I added courses in senior seminar, focusing on contemporary issues in Jewish ministry. I also added a course on the Holocaust and the crisis of evil, and one on contemporary Jewish fiction. A number of years ago, a Jewish newspaper ran a critical story about the Jewish Studies major that nevertheless expressed surprise that the MBI Jewish Studies curriculum was equivalent to curricula in university Jewish Studies majors. So, What's been the greatest impact of Moody Bible Institute's Jewish Studies program throughout the century? I'm convinced it's with the graduates of the program who have gone around the world to Jewish communities everywhere, communicating lovingly and forthrightly the message of the Messiah. Today, Moody Jewish Studies alumni serve from New York to Los Angeles, from Montreal to Buenos Aires, from Berlin to Tel Aviv, and Kiev to Jerusalem. Rabbi David Max Eichhorn, who wrote a harsh and highly critical history of Jewish evangelism, could not find fault with MBI's Jewish Studies program, stating, "It has exerted a powerful and, in the main, a wholesome influence upon American missions to the Jews." Moody Bible Institute's theological and practical commitment to the Jewish people, the apple of God's eye, has resulted in bold and effective ministry among God's chosen people across the world and across the century.